invigorated to go out and share the gospel. So for those that don't know me, my name is Pieter. My real name is Rawiri Tuko. I'm of Ngāti Porou and Ngāti Maniapoto descent. My grandmother's marae, Priscilla Te Hira Wāra, is hine ngaro in Te Aroa, and my marae in Maniapoto and Otorohanga is Te Kotaitanga marae. So it's awesome hearing you say Kotaitanga all weekend. I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely meant to be here. And one of the incredible things is that I never really knew my Ngāti Porou side. You know, it's something I'd always said, but I never knew it because my grandmother, she married an expat, a British man, and they run off to Whanganui. So we never really got introduced to my Ngāti Porou side, and when I was here yesterday in worship, I could feel God just saying to me, like, you're home.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I'd actually felt like I've travelled to Gisborne a lot. I've been here how many times? But this is the first time where God revealed to me and said, son, you're from here.
Oh.
Home. So my testimony of God's grace in my life is it's amazing. You know, my story, I haven't really opened it up and told too many people. So a lot of people, when they hear that I'm a Christian, they go, that guy. But I was raised with parents who were baptized as Christian, but they lived anything but. I was lucky to have a praying grandmother and a praying grandfather. She's the one who gave me my name of Rawiri, and it was actually after my great-grandfather, Rawiri Te Hira, who was the first Māori police officer right here in Te Aroa. So there you go. And yeah, at the age of 8 years old, I was baptized by my grandfather, and that was when the encounters with the Lord really started happening in my life. My first encounter with a demonic possession happened at that same age, just after I'd been baptized. So I came in the room and my father was possessed by demons. He'd been on a 5-day drinking bender, and he was fully overcome. His eyes were completely black. There were bones jutting out of his face, and he was speaking with a different voice that wasn't coming out of his mouth, it was coming out of his neck. And my mum, she came to me and woke me up. She said, son, you've got to come and pray. And so while she's kneeling on his chest, trying to speak to the demons, I'm there as an 8-year-old going, what is this? She's speaking to the demons, asking them who they are, and they responded, we are Legion. Come to find out later, as I've read the gospel, I understand that we are Legion means that the person is taken over by about 6,000 demons. So yeah, praise God. But my mum just asked me to pray in the name of Jesus. And I distinctly remember just laying my hand on my father's head, and he was writhing around, the bones are jutting out. He said, you know, in Jesus' name, free this man, free my dad, and immediately he came back.
Wow.
Amen.
Person who's been on a 5-day bender, drinking the whole time, using drugs, immediately sober.
Yeah.
Wow.
He had no clue what was going on. He just sat up, looked at my mum and looked at me. He goes, what's going on, guys? So yeah, that kind of, you can imagine being 8 years old, that definitely freaked me out. I lived with the terror of that for the next few months, just trying to process as an 8-year-old what went on. Because my mum didn't sit me down afterwards and explain what went on either. She just went, oh, it's just normal life. But it was around that time also, as an 8-year-old, that God started speaking to me about the plans he had for my life. This is really weird. I used to wake up every day and I would hear the voice of God, and I'd feel his presence around me telling me that, son, I have a plan and a purpose for your life. I have great things destined for your life. I've set you apart for a great work that I have in mind. For real, I thought I was going crazy. I remember asking my friends in school, saying to them, do you guys ever feel like you're destined for something? Do you ever feel like somebody's talking to you? And they all looked at me like, you're mental, bro. You're mental.
Yep.
And so, my household, as you can imagine, with my father being demon-possessed, it was a very schizophrenic one. My father was a very loving man. He was also an incredibly violent and filled with murderous rage man at times also, just taken over by his darkness, you know. And, you know, it was a hard upbringing. Lots of love, but just lots of really tough stuff to deal with as a child should not have to deal with. You know, having to wake up when your parents are literally fighting to the death and move, you know, my older brother who's disabled and my younger brother to the far room in my room so they can try and get some semblance of sleep, and then have to stand in between my parents so my father doesn't kill her and my mother doesn't kill my father. It was horrifically violent and, you know, a lot to deal with as a youngster. And so it made it really hard for my mum to stay in the church also, because she was dealing with a demon in her house. So she'd be coming home to it every weekend. Made it hard for her to believe in the promises of God. But you know, they sent us to Christian camps. So that was one amazing thing that my mum always did. She made sure that even if we weren't in church every weekend, because we weren't, she'd be sending us to Christian camps so that we'd still have some semblance of God in our lives, so we could actually start to forge and form a relationship with this God. And it was around the time, I remember around the time of 15, I'd started getting into music. And I remember going to Lake Harvest, and I just want to speak right now to any parents here who have children, send your children to these Christian camps, because I'm telling you, they will encounter Jesus in a powerful way. They really will. I distinctly remember fondly the encounters that I had at these camps, and they're still with me today. There's something about encountering Jesus on your own in a camp with people of your same age that you can't encounter him in the same way with your parents or in a church. Something, I don't know, God has a funny way of revealing himself, you know, differently to kids in those age groups. So I gave my heart to the Lord again at 15, but just got dragged away by the allure of fame, dragged away by the allure of the life, wealth, and all these things. And I knew that God had already set it out for me. That's the worst part. I knew that God had already assigned that I was going to be blessed in whatever I did. So I stood on that. And I walked away from God. I always tried to keep him close whenever I had difficulty. But I never bothered to give him praise in the good times. And I never bothered to get to know who this Lord in heaven was. Spent a lot of time over the last few years investigating, you know, supernatural events and all sorts of things, but I never really bothered to get to know him in his word, to really find out and discover who he was. And so I chased off into the music, and I became very successful, very successful. The music really took off for me, and it took me all around the world. I had a gold single. The song's called My Baby. You guys probably know it. But when that song dropped, it literally, my entire career just skyrocketed. Within the space of about 6 months, I'd already managed to walk away from my full-time employment and be full-time in the music. And I was totally, you know, enamored by the whole life, by the scene, going out to shows and, you know, partying. Literally every show was a party, just turning up and living the life. I got to travel to some amazing places. You know, Hawaii, all throughout the States, traveled to Canada, traveled all throughout Australia, all throughout the Pacific. And I did that for many, many years. And then it was in 2015 where the Lord finally he just had enough. And he basically said he's going to stop paying with me. It was game over. And so in the start of 2015, I was given over to everything that I'd given myself to, like given over to it fully. My addictions went out of control, everything just went spiraled down the toilet. So at the start of the year, I'd gone on tour with some guys on a tour across the country, and I couldn't figure out why all these guys were keeping up, like why their energy levels were through the roof. I'm exhausted. Turns out everybody's on crack. I'd never used this stuff before, I'd never been introduced to it whatsoever. But because everybody else had so much energy, I thought, far out, I don't want to be the only guy who's tired on tour. So next minute I start using methamphetamine. As the year went on, I started using a little bit more. It went from being just like an every occasional thing to pretty much every show. Like, oh yeah, brother's got the gear, that's us, let's do some stuff. Then I ended up going on tour in the United States, and I got addicted to cocaine. If you know the chemical releases in the brain, it's the same chemical that's released in the brain whether you're using methamphetamine or cocaine. So I became addicted to cocaine. We had a drug dealer come on tour with us. That's how insane it was. Like literally, we're touring all over, a drug dealer's coming with us to serve us like all the stuff that we need to get by. come back to Aotearoa at the end of around August of 2015, and I was fully given over to my addiction by then. I absolutely had to have my fix. If I couldn't get it through cocaine, well, I was going to go back to meth. And this time when I went back to meth, I went back hard. I started using every day, you know, and I'm totally given over to it. I wrote an EP at that time, which is very, very dark. The EP is called Dopamine. I think that was a cry for help. Just no one picked up on it. But the EP was very dark. It was about the darkness that was going on in my life at that time. And because of the methamphetamine, it opens you up to spiritual gateways. Some people who've used this stuff, they understand, but it really does. You know, when you look in the Bible, you know, Jesus fasted for 40 days and the devil came to him 3 times. So you can imagine what somebody in the world is like when they fast. And methamphetamine causes you to fast, big time. So as I was fasting through meth use, God and the devil started showing up big time. Big time. It was a fight. I was in a hotel room in Melbourne near the end of 2015, just sitting there waiting for my show, and all of a sudden the lights change in the room. Imagine if, you know, it's just a normal standard light, all of a sudden the lights change to like a red and a blue, and I'm looking at the wall, 5 by 5 meter wall, I see Jesus show up on the cross at Calvary. It's as though I'm standing underneath, just looking at him on the cross. And I can see exactly what he's going through right at the time of the crucifixion. I was transported there, and I can see exactly what was going on. As I'm watching all that, God starts showing me what it's going to look like at the end of days, with the Antichrist being that comes back, and what that's going to look like, standing before the masses of 100,000. It was absolutely insane. And I couldn't tell anybody about this stuff because no one I was hanging out with was Christian. No one believed in any of this stuff. So there was no one I could talk to about it. At the same time, I was having demonic encounters in my studio. I'd be in the studio late at night recording music, and I'd have the headphones on, and I could hear voices, like full-blown conversations, voices. Take the headphones off, look around, there's nobody there. You know, the government and people who try and help people with drug addiction will tell you that those are hallucinations. They're not hallucinations. It's spiritual. Very real. That realm is very real, and it comes alive to you when you're using drugs like methamphetamine. My turning point, I had an encounter with the principalities and powers that rule over the entertainment industry. So I was lying in my bed, and I'd been using gear for like 3 days, and all of a sudden, demons start showing up through the ceiling. And I can see them. They're ugly. They're telling me their names, their ages, what sections they rule over of the entertainment industry. Because I knew internally at that point, I knew that something was going to happen in my life, that it was about to go to another level, and it was either going to be with God or be with the devil. And sure enough, these things all started showing up. So I had about 400 principalities and powers that rule over the entertainment industry come through. Now, anyone who knows, who's done a bit of study on the entertainment industry, it's racked with witchcraft. It's racked with black magic. You only have to listen to the music right now to understand that it's totally overrun by demons. I've read testimonies of people who worked for some of these major record labels where they had stories, whole floors in their buildings dedicated to the witches and the warlocks. They would take the records down to that level and they'd all pray over them.
Wow.
It's horrific what music is doing to people right now. It's one of the only things that will sway people easily. All of a sudden, songs are injected into your subconscious. And before long, you're adapting these ideas that are put into the songs. That's why so many kids are so lost these days. So, they came to me and they were making me an offer. And while they're still revealing themselves and telling me who they are, I can see Lucifer in the corner of the room. He's not saying anything. He's just got his back on the corner of the wall, just waiting. Then I can see myself in the spirit kneeling before God in the throne room. And I'm kneeling before God, and I've got a korowai on my shoulders, and I can't look up at him because he's so glorious, but I'm just saying to him, Lord, take this away from me. He wasn't saying anything. He wasn't saying anything, neither was the devil. And I know what that was. God was allowing me to make my choice as to whether I was going to serve him or whether I was going to walk away. So finally, these demons are offering me cars, they're offering me chart success, They're telling me all sorts of things. We'll give you money, we'll give you this and that. But I knew enough of the Bible to know that what they were offering me was garbage.
Yeah, come on.
You know, and I said to them finally, I said, guys, it's a bum deal. You understand it's a dumb deal, right? You're going to give me cars, houses, money, chart success, all of that. And then around 70, I'm going to die and live with you for eternity. Think about that deal for a second, guys. It's a pretty dumb deal. Finally, when I rejected them, I saw 400 angels sweep in. It's crazy. It's like watching like a Michelangelo picture on your ceiling or something. It's like 400 angels come sweeping in. 2 of them on chariots. They were massive. Compared to the other angels, they would have been like at least 200, 300 feet tall. 2 of them, massive. They're coming for a massive fight. As soon as they hit the other demons, boom, it all disappeared. I saw my spirit come back from the throne room of God straight into my flesh, and Lucifer now was no longer in the corner of the room. He filled up the entire room. He pinned me to the bed. You know, people talk about sleep paralysis and all those things. He pinned me to the bed. I could see his face. I was looking at him face to face. I could see his eyes. I could see his teeth. I could see the color of his skin. I could see the horns, and I could feel his breath. I could feel him breathing on me. And I've never experienced fear like fear at that moment. It was just, it grips you. It takes you over. And he was just spewing filth and profanity at me. I hate you. I hate your guts. You're garbage. You're nothing. I'm going to kill you. And not in those nice words. It was pretty hard out. Even that wasn't enough to get me to stop using gear, but for 2 weeks after that, I continued to use meth, and I wasn't getting anything. No demonic attacks, no angelic encounters, nothing. It was just radio silence between me and God. And I couldn't even really get high. Nothing was really happening. And then I'd become such a junkie, I ended up filling up the pipe, and I tipped it out onto the bed, and I went and scooped it back up and put it back into the pipe. And when I did that, I scooped up some fibers from the bed. So when I lit the pipe, I gave myself smoke inhalation damage. It was as though I'd inhaled razor blades. And you imagine like swallowing knives, like that's what it felt like, a whole bunch of tiny knives. Immediately, I knew I'd done something terribly wrong. Terribly, terribly wrong. So far in the thongs of my addiction, I tried to light the pipe a second time and see if it would hurt still, and it did. Yeah, it was brilliant. I'll see if it hurts. One more time. Yeah, that hurts. Still hurts. And so, smoke inhalation damage, for anyone who knows somebody who's had it, it's similar to if somebody's been in a house fire and they breathe in the fumes. Well, what happens is you damage your lungs. Internally, you give yourself scarring and damage those lungs, and they have to take time to heal. And so what happened after about a week and a half, my lung collapsed. My lung completely collapsed. I couldn't breathe. I was in extreme, horrendous pain. I was really, really suffering, and I thought I was going to die. I really thought I was on the verge of dying. I ended up going to the doctors. They put a drain in the side of my chest, immediately drained out a litre of fluid that had collected around my lung, causing it to collapse. And at the start of 2015, New Year's 2015, 2016, I was in hospital for 2 weeks, sitting on a drip where they had to drain out pus and blood, about 7.5, 8 litres of fluid. And during that time, I was just faced with the fragility of my mortality.
Wow.
Where I had to ask myself the question, if I was to meet God today, would I be able to get in? No way. With the knowledge that I had of God, that I knew He was real, given my life to Him, I'd experienced Him before, and I'd thrown my whole life away. I'd chosen not to serve Him. There's no way I'd get in. Absolutely not. On the basis of my own grounds of justice. If I was the homeowner and Jesus was in my place, I wouldn't let Him in. There's no way. So at that point, it was where my life turned around for God, where I really had to make the choice where I was going to start serving Him. And not just serving Him with my mouth, but serving Him with my heart, my mind, with my deeds, with everything that I do. And so over the last 2.5 years, God basically turned my whole life around. And I finally encountered for the first time, well, not for the first time, but in my adult life for the first time, I encountered the living God.
Yeah.
And he did some amazing, amazing things in my life, and I started encountering some incredible people. I ended up going to Azusa Street over in Los Angeles, because I just happened to meet a guy from Bethel who said, you should come to this. I had no clue what it was, what Azusa Street was. It was the original outpouring of the Holy Spirit, where they had phenomenal, miraculous encounters happen. And you know, people's limbs growing out, feet growing out, arms growing out, like all sorts of crazy stuff. Well, I went over there and there was 60,000 people in a stadium just praising God, crying out to God. And so I was there. This was about a few months into my walk, into my encounter, and God just showed me an image of my whānau, my immediate family. And I got on my knees. I just fell to my knees and just started crying out for my whole family. See, my whole family was away from God. My mother, my father, my older brother, my younger brother, no one was with God. I cried out to him. I said, God, I'm back, and I want you to save my entire family. I know that I can stand on your promises, and I know that you want my whole family. So I demanded it from God. 2 weeks later, they all came back to the Lord. Every single one. God told me to start cleaning up my music also. That was one of the biggest things, because I started to realize that you can't just serve the Lord, you know, with your mouth. You know, you serve Him with all things that you do. Do all things as if unto the Lord. So God really started speaking to me about music and about the power of music, the power that it has over people. And so I started on the walk with Him and the journey of cleaning up the music to appropriate it to where it would be acceptable before Him, so that it wouldn't distort and twist the minds of young people. Because we'll be responsible for all those people. A lot of my musician friends don't realize that. They're going to be judged for all of that. And so I ended up writing an album, Goliath, which I just dropped last month. The album's called Goliath. And it's called Goliath because, you know, my name is Awari. So I felt like it's got multiple tangents. I felt like I was going up against the Goliaths of the music industry, because I've done my career independent the whole way through. I've never signed to any majors. All of my success has been God-given. It's all been Him. So it was a stab at the music industry, but it was also, you know, speaking about what's happening in the supernatural, that we're going up against the principalities and power. Ephesians 6:12, we wage war not against the flesh, but against the principalities and powers in the high places. And so that album, if you guys have heard it, it's all clean, but you'll also notice there's a praise and worship song on there as well, which I want to jam for you guys later on. But that's my testimony of God's goodness in my life. So if you guys have any family members that are wayward, I suggest pray them in, pray them in, pray them in. It's the only way. You can talk to some people till you're blue in the face about Jesus. Nothing's going to happen. You have to pray them into the kingdom. That's the way. You know, and I'll point out some scriptures later on that point to that. That prayer is going to be the only thing that's going to sway God's heart. You have to pray. And also, don't pray for the Lord's blessing on their life. Sometimes we're led to pray for that, but often, most people find God when they're, you know, on their knees. You know, the doctor said that this morning. Said often we find people when we're in our most broken places. So sometimes the prayer might be, Lord, just invade and get in any which way that you can. Whatever way you deem fit to speak to them, Father, go after them. And He will. He's a good Father. Stand on that. We're going to pass it on to Owen. Thank you, guys.